Everybody. I hope that you are well and also hope that you are having a good day so far. Today we'll be doing our grade 8 English lesson on redundancy. So we're doing our grade 8 English lesson on redundancy. And before we start with our lesson on redundancy, we're going to log on to aplusstudents.ca. Once we've logged on to aplusstudents.ca with our username as well as our password, and then we're going to select the subject of English, which is language arts, grade 8. And then we're going to scroll down up until we get to the chapter of redundancy. So our chapter that we are doing today is redundancy. The subject is English, which is language arts, grade 8. And the lessons that we're going to be focusing on is to remove redundant words or phrases. So redundancy, all right? So redundant words and phrases, needlessly, they repeat information that is given elsewhere within a sentence. So sometimes it is not the exact word that is being repeated, but it is a word that is similar in meaning to that specific word that is being repeated, right? And usually when words are being repeated, then it basically it's an unnecessary repetitive of certain words. So redundant words and phrases once again needlessly repeat information that is being given elsewhere within a sentence. And unnecessary repetitions, they create wordy, unpolished sentences. So it's basically sometimes what people do is, or what students do is, they would use more than one word within a specific sentence, right? But they'll probably try to find the synonyms of certain words in order just to make it more lengthy. But what happens is that it just creates unnecessary repetition that is just wordy, lengthy, and unpolished sentences because you're basically just repeating. And the more you're just repeating, the more you, it's like the more you are lacking the essence of what your writing basically needs to be about. So, when removing redundant words or phrases, right, that can improve your writing. So, removing the unnecessary repetition or repetitive words, right, it can improve your writing, even create proper sentence structures or proper sentence construction, if we should put it like that. For example, right, the monuments that we visited in Washington D.C. were huge and giant. So basically, huge and giant, it basically implies the same thing, right? It's like huge is a synonym of giant, or giant is a synonym of huge. It's basically either similar in meaning or it means the same thing, right? So, which means that giant is a redundant or repetition of the word huge. And it means that we need to remove the word giant from that sentence. So we need to basically just stop by huge. For example, the monuments that we visited in Washington, D.C. were huge, period. That should be our sentence. Because that specific word, if I go back, the monuments that we visited in Washington, D.C. were huge and giant, right? Even if you listen to how it is being read, the monuments that we visited in Washington, D.C. were huge and giant, right? It just creates wordy. It just adds to the length of the sentence, right? And it kind of sounds as if it's just an unpolished sentence. And that is mainly because huge and giant means the same thing. But if we remove that redundant word, that repetitive word, that word that is being repeated, right? And then we will basically have a proper sentence, which is the monuments that we visited in Washington, D.C. were huge, and that is period. So basically, words that we repeat, it doesn't have to be huge and huge all the time, but it is synonyms that is being mentioned, right? Because synonyms are words that are similar in meaning. So it's like a different word, but it either means the same or it is similar in meaning. So it almost means the same. It's either means the same or it almost means the same thing. So which means that the second word, right, that is a synonym of a specific word, which means the same thing as the other word, that we call a redundant, right? And that redundant should be removed from the sentence. All right, so if we look at another sentence, it says last month, Julie and Alex collaborated together on a project for marketing for the marketing team. So basically the word collaborated, right? And together, it's basically the same. Because the word collaborated, it basically implies together. So it's either we're just going to use collaborated, right? because now the unnecessary word that is being repeated is together. So together is basically a word that means the same that or it means almost the same thing as collaborated. So which means that this word collaborated, it already implies togetherness or together. Because if they say Julie and Alex collaborated on a project for the marketing team, then it means that they worked together on a project for the marketing team. So that is why I'm saying that together already means or already implies together. So which means that that word together is a redundant, right? So this word is a redundant and it needs to be removed from the sentence because it is basically an unnecessary repetition within that sentence. It basically just creates wordy and unpolished sentence. And like I say, sometimes students would add certain synonyms to words in order to add to the wording of your essay or your writing piece, right? But it basically just brings about a lengthy a repetition or repetitive wordy unpolished sentence or essay because there's a lot of words that is being repeated but the words are different. Words are different but it is similar in meaning. So all repetition of words or repetitive words or words that is being repeated, it needs to be removed because we call those words, we say that is a redundant. And a redundant should be removed from any sentence because it just creates wordy and polished sentences. And if we look at a few examples, right? Here we have 3 examples where we are going to identify the redundant words that needs to be removed from the sentence, right? It says politicians they face a difficult dilemma. Should they raise taxes or cut spending to create a comprehensive budget? So once again, politicians face a difficult dilemma. Should they raise taxes or cut spending to create a comprehensive budget? So basically, if we look at the sentence, right, the word difficult already means the same as a dilemma, right? It's almost like saying that they are experiencing or facing a difficult situation, or we can just say that they are facing a dilemma, right? Which means that the redundant word that we need to remove from the sentence is difficult. So difficult is going to be removed. So this is a redundant that we are going to remove because it just brings about repetition. And like I say, this word difficult, it basically is the same or similar to a dilemma. So we can now just say that politicians, they face a dilemma. Should they raise taxes or should they just cut spending to create a comprehensive budget? So redundant is the word difficult. It is just an unnecessary repetition of a word, or a word that is basically just being repeated within that sentence. If we look at the second or the next sentence, right, it says spectators and players are not currently allowed to enter the sports arena right now. And if we look at that sentence, right, it says spectators and players, right? Meaning that people that is sitting on the stands and watching the game, as well as people that are playing the game, right? Spectators and players are not currently allowed to enter the sports arena right now. And the word right now is a repetition of the word currently, because currently means now. So basically, us just saying right now also, it means currently. So which means that currently, I'm sorry, right now is basically just a repeat of the word currently. Right now is a repeat of the word currently, which means that right now is our redundant. And we can basically remove that word from the sentence. And if we remove that word, then it's going to sound spectators and players are not currently allowed to enter the sports arena. Period. That is our sentence. And we removed the unnecessary repetition of words, which is right now. And having unnecessary repetition of words, right? It basically just shows or makes the sentence to be wordy. It makes it unnecessarily lengthy. And it basically just shows as if, or basically the sentence looks as if it is an unpolished sentence, or as if the sentence is not complete. If we look at another example, right, it says low introductory home loan rates usually revert back to standard interest rates after the initial period is complete. So low introductory home loan rates, they usually revert back to standard interest rates after the initial period is complete. And if we look at these two words, revert and we look at back, right? The word revert and back is basically words that means almost the same thing, right? Because revert is like saying it is returning It's returning back to something. It's like returning to your, let's say, to your previous state, for example. And even if we look at the word back, right? Then back also means it's like you are returning to something. It's like you are returning to an earlier position or normal position. And that is basically similar to the word revert, which means that you are either returning to either your previous state or your previous position. So, which means that we need to remove one of those words. So, we can remove the word back because back is basically just a redundant word that is an unnecessary repetitive word. So, we need to remove this redundant word, which is back. And if we remove that word, and then we can basically say low introductory home loan rates usually revert to standard interest rates after the initial period is complete. So far we have seen examples of sentences with redundancies or redundant words in, and it is basically just words that is being repeated, right? And words that is unnecessarily repeated, right? It basically just brings about a lengthy sentence. It also shows as if the sentence is unpolished because you have unnecessary repetitive words. Because unnecessary repetitive words are words, it's almost like the word is being duplicated, but in a like it's like synonyms that is being repeated. So it's just a different word that is also placed within that sentence, but the meaning of those two words, it is the same. So like the same with revert and back, revert is the synonym of back or back is the synonym of revert. Same with currently. Currently is a synonym of right. Right now. Right now is a synonym of currently. Same with dilemma. All right. It is a synonym of difficult, or difficult is a synonym of dilemma. So it basically means the same thing, or it has a similar meaning to one another. And when it comes to redundancies, right, then one of those words needs to be removed because it basically just creates an unpolished sentence. So basically, redundant words and phrases, it basically repeats information that is given elsewhere within a sentence. And that is why I said that it's as if synonyms are being used within that sentence. And removing redundant words, right, or phrases that can improve your writing. It can improve your writing because you will basically remove unnecessary repetitions, right? Because there's unnecessary repetitions of words. They just create wordy, unpolished sentences. It's like we were saying that it basically just creates a sentence that is lengthy. and the unnecessary repetition of words, that specific word needs to be removed. And that is why the lesson says remove redundant words or phrases. And once we remove it, like we say, it can basically improve your writing. All right, so now we're going to do our tutorial lesson and test on a plus students.ca, right? So we already did like most of the explanation on redundancy and about removing redundant words or phrases. So now we're just going to do a few activities and then we're going to do a test. So let's go to a plus students.ca. And we're going to do the lesson on remove redundant words or phrases under the chapter of redundancy. All right. So we said that redundant words and phrases, right? It repeats information that is given elsewhere within a sentence. And we see that unnecessary repetition creates wordy, unpolished, or lengthy sentences. And by us removing those redundant words or phrases, it can improve your writing. So even here, it says Patrick and Alexa are collaborating together on a cover of John Lennon's song Imagine. And we said that the word together means the same as the word collaborating. So the word together means the same as the word collaborating. Because if I say that Patrick and Alexa are collaborating on a cover of John Lennon's song, then I'm basically saying that they will be working together on John Lennon's song, or they will be together on the cover of John Lennon's song. Or we can just say that they are together or working together on the song or the cover of the song. So together and collaborating, it basically means the same thing. That is why I was saying it is basically synonyms that is being used. So it is two different words, which is collaborating and together, but these two words, they actually mean the same thing or they are similar in meaning, and we call that synonyms, which means that one of these words needs to be removed, and we call that the redundant word needs to be removed, right? So together and collaborating is redundant, right? And together needs to be removed. All right, if we look at the sentence, several hikers gathered to watch as the peregrine falcon soared and flew through the sky. The word soar or soared and flew, it basically means the same thing, right? So soared means the same thing as flew. It goes to soar, right? To soar is basically to fly. And flew is to fly. It's just the past tense of fly. And soar is to basically fly high in the sky, for example. But saw and flew, it basically means the same thing. So which means that soared and flew, they are a redundant, right? They are redundant. And flew, we are going to remove. So flew or and flew, we removed. So we can just say several hikers gathered to watch as the peregrine falcon soared through the sky. So we don't have to say and flew because now we are just repeating. All right, it says the historical society lecture was was brief in duration but full of interesting information. All right, so if we look at the word that needs to be removed, right, then the word in duration should be removed because now the word brief, and the word in duration, they are redundant, right? Which means that one of the words needs to be removed, and we're going to remove in duration because duration and brief are redundant. So we're going to remove in duration without even having to change the meaning of the sentence. It is just going to be taken out, and the meaning of the sentence or the sentence won't be changed at all. So if we reread that sentence, we can then say the historical society lecture was brief but full of interesting information. So brief and duration, it basically means it's almost like timely. It gives us an indication of time, how long it was. Right? All right, so now we're going on to our test, right? Where we are going to remove redundant words and phrases. So we need to select the word or phrase that is redundant and can be removed without changing the meaning of a text. The historical society lecture was brief in duration but full of interesting information, or the historical society lecture was brief in duration but full of interesting information. So if we remove one of these two words, if we remove in duration or we remove of interesting, which word can be removed without changing the meaning of the text? The first option or the second option? Without changing the text. I remember it basically, you also need to look at the word that is being repeated within that sentence. All right, so if we look at the word or if we select the word or phrase that is redundant, right, and can be removed without changing the meaning of the text, then yes, we are going to choose the first one, right? Because brief and in duration, it basically means the same thing, right? So in duration, if we remove in duration, it is not going to change the meaning of the sentence or of the text. So the first one is correct. So well done. The first one is correct. We need to select the word or phrase that is redundant and can be removed without changing the meaning of a text. The twins are a pair of actors who recently appeared in a documentary about personality differences among siblings. So the two sentences are basically the same, but now the highlighted word, right? The word that is basically redundant or repeating, is it a pair of or is it differences? And if we look at a specific word, right? Look at the word twins. Twins, is it a pair of or does twins mean differences? Twins, is it a pair of, which is the first one, or is it the second one, which means differences? So if we remove something, does it mean that it's going to change the meaning of the text? All right, so basically, the words that are redundant are twins and a pair of, because twins, it means two, right? Or it is already a pair, right? It is two. And here, the word that is being highlighted, the first word is a pair of, right? Which means that if we remove a pair of, then it will be the twins are actors who recently appeared in a documentary about personality differences among siblings. So we're going with the first one. And well done. The first one is correct. The two actresses were mortified when they arrived at the event wearing the same identical ball gowns. So we need to choose the word that is redundant or the phrase that is redundant and can be removed without changing the meaning of a text. Is it wearing or is it identical? Look at the word same. Look at the word same. Same. The synonym of same is what? Is it wearing? Or the synonym of same is identical? All right, so basically, the word that is similar to the word same is identical, right? Because if something is identical to one another, then it is the same, right? It is not wearing. So, which means that if we remove the word identical from that sentence, right? And then it won't change the meaning of the text. So, we're going to choose the second one. And great job. The second one is correct. All right, so the committee has decided to postpone the instructor training workshop until later. Or, so we're going to have to choose one of the words that are redundant. Is it until later or the instructor? So the word that is redundant to postpone. Is it until later or the instructor? And if we choose the correct word or phrase that is redundant, then basically the word that is redundant to postpone is until later, because when you postpone something, it is basically you moving something till later. We can either postpone it to later on, we can postpone it to tomorrow, but on a later stage. So we will choose the first one because even if we remove that words until later, it's not going to change the meaning of the text. So well done, the first one is correct. And to learn astrophysics, you should start with the basic fundamentals. Or to learn astrophysics, you should start with the basics or fundamentals, which means that we need to choose one of those. Is it either basic, that is redundant, or you should? So the word that is redundant to fundamental. So to learn astrophysics, you should start with the basic fundamental. So if we remove the word you should, right? Is it going to change the meaning of a text? So, for example, it says to learn astrophysics, start with the basic fundamentals. Or do we say to learn astrophysics, you should start with the fundamentals? All right, so basically, let us then choose the second one. Okay, let's go with the second one, right? Let's see. So basically, basic, right? Basic, it's like saying the fundamentals, right? Because usually fundamentals is like saying, let's start by the beginning, let's start by the, year at the bottom, right? So no worries, right? But the first one is correct. But well done for trying. But the first one is correct. Because basic and fundamentals, that is redundant because it's like saying the basics, going back to the basics, and we also make mention of fundamentals being basically the basics. But well done for trying. Patrick and Alexa are collaborating together on the cover of John Lennon's song Imagine. Which word or phrase is redundant? Is it together or imagine? The word that is redundant to collaborating. So the word that is redundant or almost the same as collaborating, is it together or is it imagine? So if I'm going to read the sentence for you again now. So the word collaborating, if I say that um, we are collaborating on something, right? Then it basically means that we are working on something. And if you and the next person is working on something, then it means that you are working together, right? So the word that is redundant to collaborating, is it together or is it imagine? So basically, the word that means the same or almost the same as collaborating is together, right? Because if they are working on something, they are collaborating on a song with Lennon's cover, which is they are working together. They're collaborating together. So if we remove the word together, then that sentence is still gonna make sense. Like for example, Patrick and Alexa are collaborating on a cover of John Lennon's song Imagine, right? So which means that we are going with the first option because if we remove the word together and then the sentence or the meaning won't change of the text. But well done for trying. All right, so this is now the end of our lesson on redundancy. And redundancy are basically words that is repeated within a sentence, right? It is words that are similar in meaning. So sometimes words that are similar in meaning are sometimes added or written within a sentence. And it basically just brings about redundancy. And those two words that are similar, we call that redundant, right? And in order for us to show that the sentence is either making sense or to bring smoothness within a sentence, we need to remove the redundant word, right? Because sometimes added words that is just added to it, or extra words that is being added to it, it just makes a sentence more lengthy. It is unnecessary repetition of words, right? And it does bring almost like the sentence to not flow properly. All right, so this is now the end of our lesson on redundancy. Thank you very much, grade 8s, for joining our class. Thank you very much for interacting. I really hope that you do have a better understanding of what redundancy is. Till next time, have a good evening further. Goodbye.